I didn't know that finishing overtime early would be the worst luck of my life. I remember the exact second it happened. The foreman looked up from his clipboard, squinted at the clock on the wall, and said my name like he was doing me a favor. "You're clear. Go home." We wrapped faster than expected. For a moment I just stood there, helmet still on, hands numb from the cold and the machines. 5 hours early. That never happened. Overtime was sacred, guaranteed money, predictable exhaustion, the kind of grind that let me pretend I was being responsible instead of absent. I told myself I earned this. I told myself my daughter would be asleep anyway. I told myself my wife would be relieved. Those were the lies that made the drive home feel light. The road was empty, snow dusting the edges like someone had tried to erase the world. My phone buzzed on the console, my wife's name lighting up the screen. I smiled, already rehearsing the surprise in my head. Maybe I'd bring takeout. Maybe I'd wake our daughter just to hug her and put her back to bed. Small gestures to make up for the nights I missed. "Hey," I said when she answered. "Guess who's home early?" There was a pause. Too long. "Oh," she said. "Already?" Not happy. Not annoyed. Just flat. "Yeah," I said, my smile thinning. "Thought I'd surprise you both." Another pause. I could hear something in the background, television noise, maybe. Or a voice. I couldn't tell. "She's not here," my wife said. I gripped the steering wheel a little tighter. "What do you mean, not here?" "She's at her grandpa's," she said quickly. Too quickly. She wanted to stay over. You know how she gets. I didn't know how she got. She hated sleeping anywhere that wasn't her own bed. She cried the last time we tried. "You sure?" I asked. She didn't mention it. "Well, she did to me," my wife snapped. Then softer, "Don't overthink it. She's fine." Fine. That word has weight when you don't believe it. I pulled into our driveway 20 minutes later. The porch light was on. The living room lights too. Snow covered the ground in a clean, untouched sheet. No footprints. No tire tracks except mine. Something felt wrong in the way a room feels wrong when you walk into it mid-argument. Like the air remembered something you didn't. I unlocked the door and stepped inside. "Hey," I called out. "I'm home." No answer. I dropped my keys in the bowl by the door. They echoed louder than they should have. The house was warm, quiet, staged. The couch pillows were lined up perfectly. The TV was off. My wife's shoes were by the stairs, but her coat was missing. I checked my daughter's room out of habit, already knowing what I'd find. Her bed was made. Not slept in made. Not rushed through the morning made. That's when my phone buzzed again. A text from my wife. "She's safe. Please don't make this a thing." I stared at the message, my thumb hovering over the screen. 100 replies came to mind. Questions, accusations, jokes meant to smooth things over. Instead, I typed, "Which grandpa?" 3 dots appeared. Disappeared. Appeared again. Her dad's. My chest tightened. Her father lived 20 minutes away. He was old school. Strict. A man who believed children needed structure the way broken bones needed casts. He also believed fear was a teaching tool. I didn't reply. I didn't call. I grabbed my coat and went back outside. The cold slapped me awake. Snow crunched under my boots as I walked down the steps. That's when I saw her. At first, my brain refused to process it. I thought it was a mailbox shadow. A trick of the light. Then she moved. She was standing near the edge of the driveway, small and still, like she was waiting for permission to exist. No jacket. No shoes. Her pajama pants were soaked at the cuffs, stiff with ice. Her breath came out in short, shaky clouds. She was holding a piece of cardboard with both hands. I couldn't hear anything over the blood rushing in my ears as I ran toward her. Hey, baby, what are you doing out here?" She looked up at me, eyes wide, lips blue, and lifted the sign. "Don't go inside, Daddy." The words were uneven. Marker pressed too hard in some places, faint in others. Like she'd been scared of writing the wrong thing. I dropped to my knees in front of her, my coat already coming off. "Geez, come here," I said, wrapping it around her, pulling her against me. She was freezing. Not cold, freezing. Her body trembled like it didn't trust warmth anymore. "Why are you out here?" I asked, my voice breaking despite everything I tried to hold together. "Why aren't you inside?" She hesitated. Looked past me, toward the house. Then she lifted another piece of cardboard. "I am a liar." My stomach dropped so hard I thought I might throw up. "What?" I whispered. "No, you're not." "Who told you that?" Her teeth chattered as she spoke. "Uncle said liars don't deserve warmth." "Uncle, not Grandpa." I pressed my forehead against hers, breathing her in, trying to anchor myself. The world narrowed to her shaking body and the sound of my own heartbeat pounding too fast, too loud. "Did you lie about something?" I asked gently. She nodded. "I said I didn't spill the juice. That was it. Not a crime. Not a sin. A normal, stupid, harmless kid thing. I was supposed to stand here until I learned," she said. "But it got really cold. And I didn't know if you'd come home." My hands curled into fists inside my gloves. "I'm here," I said. "I'm here now." She looked at me like she wasn't sure that was allowed. Then she leaned in and whispered something that changed the shape of the night. "Daddy," she said, her voice barely there. "Please don't go inside." I looked past her. At the house. At the warm lights. At the place I thought was safe because I paid for it. That was the moment I understood something I had spent years avoiding. Working late hadn't protected my family. It had left them alone with people who thought fear was love. I lifted her into my arms, her head resting against my chest, her fingers clutching my shirt like she might fall through me if she let go. "I need you to listen to me," I said. "You did nothing wrong. Nothing. Ever." She nodded, but I could tell she didn't believe it yet. I carried her toward the house. And even though every instinct in me was screaming to stay outside, to keep her away from whatever waited beyond that door, I turned the handle. Because some things don't get better unless you walk straight into them. I didn't carry her inside right away. Not because I didn't want to, but because she stiffened in my arms the moment I turned toward the door. Her fingers dug into my collar, small and desperate, like she was bracing for something she couldn't name but already feared. "Daddy," she whispered again, closer this time, like the word itself might break if she said it too loud. "Please." I stopped at the bottom of the steps. Snow crept into the cuffs of my jeans. The cold bit through my socks, sharp and immediate. I welcomed it. I needed something real to hold on to. "It's okay," I said, even though I wasn't sure yet what that meant. "I've got you." She shook her head against my chest. Not arguing. Just rejecting the idea. Like it was a rule she wasn't allowed to accept. That's when I noticed her feet. They were red and swollen, the skin mottled and cracked. Tiny toes curled inward, like they tried to protect themselves and failed. Snow clung to her soles, melting into slush where her skin touched mine. Something hot and violent rose up my spine. "How long?" I asked, my voice too calm, too quiet. The kind of calm that scares people. She shrugged. "Uncle said until I learned." "Learned what?" She hesitated, then whispered, "Not to lie." I swallowed hard. The house behind us glowed like a lie. Warm light spilling through windows. A place that should have meant safety. Instead, it felt like a threat. I peeled off my gloves and wrapped them around her feet, one by one, rubbing gently to bring the feeling back. She winced, then relaxed a little, like her body didn't remember what care felt like anymore. "Does Mommy know you're out here?" I asked. She nodded. She said it was important. That word landed harder than the cold. Important. I pressed my forehead to hers, breathing slowly, trying to keep my voice steady. "Did anyone check on you?" She shook her head. "Uncle said checking would ruin the lesson." Lesson? I wanted to scream. I wanted to kick the door in. I wanted to do something big and loud and irreversible. Instead, I forced myself to stay still. Because she was watching me. Children learn what safety looks like by watching how the adults they trust handle danger. And right now, I was the only adult she had. "Okay," I said quietly. "Here's what we're going to do." She looked up at me, eyes glossy, searching my face for permission. "We're going to go inside together," I said. "Not because you did anything wrong. But because you don't belong out here." Her lip trembled. Will I get in trouble? No, I said without hesitation. You won't. She studied me like she was trying to spot the lie. Then she nodded. I stood, holding her close, and climbed the steps. Every step felt heavier than the last. The door opened easily. Too easily. Like it had been waiting. Warm air rushed over us, fogging my glasses. I closed the door behind us with my foot and stood there for a second, just breathing. The house smelled like coffee and something sweet. Vanilla, maybe. Normal smells. Domestic smells. I hated them. I carried her into the living room and sat on the couch, pulling a blanket from the back and wrapping it around her shoulders. She curled into me immediately, like her body had been holding itself together by will alone. Daddy? She asked softly. Yeah. Am I bad? There was. Not the punishment. Not the cold. The belief. I closed my eyes, feeling something crack open in my chest. No, I said. You're not bad. You're a kid. Kids make messes. Kids tell stories. That doesn't make you bad. She nodded again, but this time her eyes stayed on the floor. I looked around the room. That's when I saw the signs. They were taped neatly along the wall, like decorations. Pieces of cardboard. Printer paper. Handwritten rules in thick black marker. Truth keeps us warm. Lying makes us weak. Lessons require sacrifice. My jaw tightened. I stood carefully, keeping one arm around her, and walked closer. Some of the signs had stars drawn next to them. Others had dates. This wasn't a moment. It was a system. Who made these? I asked. She didn't answer right away. Hey, I said gently. You're safe. You can tell me. Uncle, she said. Mommy helped tape them. I felt the room tilt. I sat back down, my legs suddenly weak. How long has this been happening? She shrugged. Since you've been working a lot. The words weren't accusatory. They were factual. I thought about all the nights I came home after midnight. All the mornings I left before sunrise. All the times I told myself she wouldn't remember. She remembered everything. I brushed her hair back from her face. When did he tell you to go outside? After dinner, she said. He said if I was really sorry I'd prove it. And Mommy? She said it would make me stronger. Stronger? I swallowed the taste of blood in my mouth. A sound came from upstairs. Footsteps. My wife's voice floated down the stairs. I thought you'd be home later. I didn't answer. She appeared in the doorway, coat half off, keys in her hand. Her eyes flicked to the blanket. To our daughter curled against me. Then to the signs. Her face changed. Not surprise. Calculation. She shouldn't have told you, she said. That was it. That was the sentence that broke something in me. Told me what? I asked quietly. She sighed, like I was being unreasonable. You're always tired. Always stressed. This was supposed to help. Help who? She lies, my wife said, defensive now. She needs structure. Consequences. She's 7, I said. My voice shook despite everything I tried to hold down. She was standing barefoot in the snow. She was learning, my wife said. That actions matter. I stood up. Slowly. Actions do matter, I said. And so do the people who choose them. My daughter tightened her grip on me. That's when I understood something else. This wasn't just about what had happened tonight. It was about every time I chose work over watching closely. Every time I assumed love was enough without presence. I looked at my wife, really looked at her. Where is he? I asked. She hesitated. And in that hesitation, I saw the rest of the night stretching out in front of me. I held my daughter tighter. Because whatever was coming next, I wasn't leaving her alone with it again. I didn't raise my voice. That surprised me the most. Everything in my body was screaming to explode, to shout, to accuse, to tear the room apart until someone finally admitted what they'd done. But my daughter was still in my arms, her head tucked under my chin, listening to the way my heart raced. So I stayed quiet. Because silence, I was starting to understand, can either be a weapon or a shield. My wife stood by the doorway, keys dangling from her fingers, watching me like she was waiting to see which version of me would show up. The tired husband who avoided conflict. Or the man who scared her. I didn't give her either. Go upstairs, I said calmly. I need to check something. She frowned. Now. Just now. She hesitated, then glanced at our daughter. Something flickered across her face, guilt, maybe, or annoyance. I couldn't tell anymore. Fine, she said, turning away. But don't undo everything we've been trying to teach her. Teach her. The words followed her up the stairs. I waited until I heard the bedroom door close. Then I shifted my daughter so she was sitting beside me on the couch, wrapped tight in the blanket. She watched me with that same careful attention she'd had outside, like sudden movements were dangerous. I'm going to look around, I said. You stay right here, okay? She nodded. Am I allowed to talk? The question nearly broke me. Yes, I said, forcing a smile. You're always allowed to talk. She considered that, like it was a new rule she wasn't sure she trusted yet. I stood and began walking through the house. At first glance, everything looked normal. Almost too clean. No toys out of place. No clutter. The kind of order people compliment without asking how it's maintained. I started in the kitchen. The fridge was covered in magnets and drawings, old ones. From months ago. Nothing recent. Like someone had decided chaos had an expiration date. On the counter sat a notebook. I opened it. Neat columns. Dates. Chicks. Truth told. Truth withheld. Consequence applied. My stomach tightened. I flipped the page. Spill juice. Denied. Lesson. Cold reflection. Another page. Forgot homework. Said dog ate it. Lesson. Silence time. Silence time. I leaned against the counter, breathing through my nose, trying not to imagine what that meant. A sound came from the living room. My daughter clearing her throat softly, like she was reminding herself she existed. I'm still here, she said. I know, I replied. I hear you. Her shoulders relaxed. I moved toward the hallway. The guest room door was closed. I opened it. Inside, the bed had been pushed against the wall. A small chair sat in the corner facing nothing. The window was cracked open, letting in a thin stream of cold air. On the wall above the chair, written in the same thick marker. Speak when spoken to. I backed out of the room slowly. My chest felt tight. Like the house itself was pressing in on me. I made my way to the study. That's where I found the tablet. It was propped up on the desk, plugged in, screen dark. I tapped it. A video file was open. I hesitated. Then I pressed play. My daughter's voice filled the room. I'm sorry for lying, she said, small and rehearsed. I understand lying hurts trust. I will accept my lesson. She looked straight ahead, eyes blank, hands folded in her lap. Off camera, a man's voice spoke. Patient. Again, he said. With meaning. The video restarted. I stopped it. My hands were shaking now. This wasn't discipline. It was training. I walked back into the living room and knelt in front of her. Did you have to record these? I asked. She nodded. Uncle said Mommy needed proof I was improving. Proof. I swallowed hard. Did he ever hurt you? She looked confused. Not like hitting. My jaw clenched. Did he scare you? She nodded slowly. He said fear helps the truth stay. I closed my eyes. The house was quiet. Too quiet. Like it was holding its breath. Footsteps sounded on the stairs. My wife appeared again, arms crossed now, defensive posture fully engaged. You done snooping? She asked. I stood. This ends tonight, I said. Her eyes narrowed. You don't get to decide that. I absolutely do, I replied. Because I'm her father. And I failed once by not paying attention. She scoffed. You're being dramatic. I gestured toward the hallway. Toward the guest room. Toward the invisible weight pressing on all of us. This house taught her to be quiet, I said. And I won't let it teach her that anymore. She opened her mouth to argue. The doorbell rang. Sudden. My daughter flinched. I turned toward the door. Somewhere deep in my chest, anger finally settled into something solid. Whoever was on the other side, They were about to learn that silence was no longer an option. The doorbell rang again. Longer this time. I didn't move. Neither did my wife. My daughter pressed her face into my side, like if she couldn't see the world might forget to hurt her. I rested my hand on the back of her head, feeling the slow, uneven rhythm of her breathing. "Are you expecting someone?" my wife asked. Her voice was sharp, but there was something underneath it now. Fear, maybe. Or calculation. The sound someone makes when they realize a situation is slipping out of their control. I shook my head. No. The doorbell stopped. Silence rushed in to take its place. That silence pulled me backward, years, not minutes. Back to when staying late felt noble. When overtime meant security. When exhaustion was proof I was doing the right thing. I used to tell myself I was sacrificing for my family. What I was really doing was hiding from them. From the hard conversations. From the messy emotions. From the responsibility that doesn't clock out when your shift ends. The house creaked softly, settling around us. I could still feel the echo of the doorbell in my chest, like a warning shot. "I need to talk to you," I said to my wife. "Now?" she asked. "Just now." She glanced at our daughter. "Not in front of her." I shook my head. "She's heard enough silence." That landed. My wife's jaw tightened. She exhaled through her nose and crossed her arms. "You don't understand," she said. "You weren't here." There was the accusation I'd been avoiding for years. "You're right," I said quietly. "I wasn't." She blinked, clearly expecting a fight. "I was working," she continued, pressing forward now. "I was holding things together. Someone had to teach her discipline." "Discipline isn't fear," I said. "And it isn't isolation." "She lies," my wife snapped. "All kids do, and if you don't correct it early, it gets worse." I nodded slowly. "And who corrected you?" She froze. The question hung between us, heavy and exposed. "I turned out fine," she said after a beat. That sentence. It's the most dangerous one people tell themselves. "Did you?" I asked. Her eyes flashed. "That's not fair." "Neither is standing a child barefoot in the snow," I said. My daughter stirred, shifting closer to me. "I didn't want it to go that far," my wife said, quieter now. "He said it was effective. He said fear creates respect. Not a name. A shield. You let him decide how our daughter learns right from wrong," I said. "He's family," she replied. "And he listens. He doesn't get emotional." I felt something settle into place then. Not rage. Clarity. "You trusted him," I said, "because he reminded you of something familiar." She looked away. The lie I'd been telling myself cracked open. I thought my absence was temporary. I thought love would cover the gaps. I thought being a good provider made up for not being present. But absence doesn't stay empty. Something always fills it. I knelt down in front of my daughter. "Can you go sit in your room for a minute?" I asked gently. "Leave the door open. I'll be right here." She hesitated, then nodded. She walked slowly down the hall, glancing back twice before disappearing into her room. The door stayed open. I stood and faced my wife. "This stops," I said. "Tonight." "You don't get to make unilateral decisions," she shot back. "Not after being gone this long." I nodded. "You're right. I gave up that right when I chose work over paying attention." She scoffed. "So what, now you're the hero?" "No," I said. "I'm the one who's staying." The doorbell rang again. 3 short presses. My wife stiffened. "That's him." Finally. "Did you call him?" I asked. "Yes," she said. "When you didn't answer your phone earlier. I told him things were getting out of hand." Out of hand. Like this was a misunderstanding. Like a child hadn't been turned into a lesson. I took a breath. "Go upstairs," I said. "Stay with her." She shook her head. "No. I'm not letting you antagonize him." I stepped past her. "This isn't about antagonizing," I said. "It's about ending it." I opened the front door. He stood there with his hands in his coat pockets, face calm, eyes scanning past me into the house like he owned it. "Evening," he said. "I was wondering when you'd get involved." There was the judgment, the quiet superiority. She's my daughter, I said. I'm always involved. He smiled thinly. Then you should have been here sooner. I felt the urge to swing, to end the conversation the way men like him understand. Instead, I stepped aside. Come in, I said. His smile widened. Mistake. That's what he thought. As he walked past me, I realized something. For years, I'd believed strength looked like endurance, like silence, like swallowing anger and calling it responsibility. But real strength? It looks like standing still when everything in you wants to explode. I closed the door behind him, and for the first time that night, I knew exactly what I was going to do next. He didn't take his coat off. That told me everything. Men who plan to stay get comfortable. Men who plan to dominate keep their exits clear. He stood in the middle of my living room like a supervisor on a factory floor, eyes moving, cataloging, already deciding what needed correction. Cold out there, he said casually. Good for discipline. I didn't respond. Silence unsettles men like him. They mistake it for weakness because they've never learned the difference between restraint and submission. My wife hovered near the stairs, arms folded tight across her chest. I could hear my daughter's door creak upstairs, open just enough for her to listen. I didn't turn. I didn't want her to see my face yet. You overreacted, he continued, walking toward the couch. Kids today, too soft. Too many excuses. Don't sit, I said. He stopped mid-step, surprised. This is my house, he replied. And that was my daughter in the snow, I said evenly. We'll both stand. Something shifted then. Not anger. Appraisal. He smiled like a man indulging a child. You weren't here. Someone had to teach her. There was. The justification men pass down like an heirloom. I was raised the same way, he went on. Fear keeps people honest. I nodded once. It kept you quiet. His smile faltered. What? It didn't make you honest, I said. It made you obedient. There's a difference. My hands were steady. That surprised me. My heart still hammered, but it no longer controlled my mouth. You think you're better than me? He asked, voice sharpening. No, I said. I think I waited too long to say something. He laughed, short and dismissive. This is what happens when men stop being men. I turned to face him fully. Men don't talk about what scares them, I said. They hand it down instead. He took a step closer. I could smell the cold on his coat, sharp and metallic. Watch your tone. I didn't move. You confuse control with strength, I said. And you need children to feel powerful. That one landed. His jaw tightened. You're projecting. No, I said. I'm recognizing. I reached into my pocket and pulled out my phone. I have recordings, I said. Videos. Notes. Dates. My wife's head snapped toward me. You went through everything? She asked. I paid attention, I replied. The uncle's eyes flicked to the phone, then back to me. You wouldn't, he said. Family matters stay inside the family. That's how this survived, I said. Silence. He scoffed. You going to call the police? Over discipline. I shook my head. No. Relief flashed across his face. I already did. The air changed. My wife's breath caught. You what? I reported what I found, I said. And I'm filing a formal complaint. Tonight. The uncle stepped back, hand tightening in his coat pocket. You don't know what you're doing. I do, I said. For the first time in a long time. A knock sounded at the door. From official. My daughter's footsteps thudded upstairs, quick and panicked. Stay where you are, I called out, my voice carrying without rising. The uncle turned toward the door, then back to me. You think this makes you a hero? No, I said. It makes me accountable. I opened the door. 2 officers stood on the porch, snow clinging to their boots. Alert. Sir, one said. We received a call. I nodded. That was me. Behind me, I felt the uncle stiffen. The next few minutes blurred together. Questions. Statements. My wife crying quietly. The uncle insisting it was a misunderstanding. I stayed steady. When one officer asked my daughter if she felt safe, she hesitated. I knelt beside her. "You can tell the truth," I said softly. "You won't be punished." She looked at me, searching. Then she nodded. "No," she said. "I don't feel safe with him." The words echoed through the room. The uncle's shoulders slumped for the first time. As they led him toward the door, he looked back at me. "You think you've won," he said quietly. "But you just broke your family." I met his gaze. "No," I said. "You did. I'm just ending it." The door closed behind them. The house felt different without him. Lighter. Like it could breathe again. My wife sank onto the couch, face buried in her hands. "What happens now?" she whispered. I looked at my daughter, wrapped in the blanket, watching me with wide, uncertain eyes. "Now," I said, "we learn how to be honest without fear." She took a small step toward me. I opened my arms. She ran into them. And in that moment, holding her while the snow continued to fall outside, I understood something men like him never will. Strength isn't inherited. It's chosen. And sometimes choosing it means saying out loud the things men are taught to bury. This wasn't the end. But it was the first time the truth had been warm. After they left, the house didn't feel quiet. It felt exposed. Like the walls had been stripped down to studs, every assumption hanging out in the open where we couldn't pretend not to see it anymore. Snow kept falling outside, soft and relentless. The kind that erases footprints but never really cleans anything. I stood in the living room with my daughter still in my arms, her weight light but anchoring, like if I let go I might drift into something I couldn't come back from. My wife sat on the couch, staring at the floor. She hadn't moved since the door closed. Her shoulders were shaking, but there were no sounds. No words. Just the quiet collapse of someone whose certainty had finally given out. I didn't look at her. Not yet. Because this moment wasn't about repairing a marriage or assigning blame. It was about choosing clearly and publicly who mattered most. I carried my daughter into the kitchen and set her gently on the counter. I wrapped a towel around her feet, rubbing warmth back into skin that still looked too pale. She watched my face the entire time. Kids do that when they're waiting for the truth. "Daddy?" she asked. "Yeah." "Are they mad at me?" The question landed like a punch. "No," I said immediately. "They're not mad at you. They're listening." She frowned. "Why?" "Because you told the truth." I didn't say it out loud yet. I needed to be careful. Truth had been turned into a weapon around her. I wasn't going to swing it carelessly. "Because you were brave," I said instead. Her eyebrows pulled together. I didn't feel brave. I smiled softly. "That's usually how it works." She considered that, then nodded like she was filing it away. I helped her into dry socks and my spare hoodie, sleeves rolled up past her hands. She looked smaller in it. Younger. Like the night had taken something from her and I didn't know yet how to give it back. When I carried her back into the living room, my wife finally looked up. Her eyes were red. Not from crying, she didn't cry easily, but from something deeper. Recognition, maybe. Or regret. "I didn't know how bad it was," she said. I stopped. The sentence hovered there, unfinished. "I didn't want to see it," she added. "That one was closer to the truth." I sat down with my daughter on my lap, facing her. "This isn't a conversation we're having right now," I said calmly. Her mouth opened, then closed again. "Later," I added. "With help." She nodded slowly. I wasn't being cruel. I was being clear. For the first time in a long time, clarity didn't feel like anger. A knock came at the door again. Not sharp this time. Gentle. Professional. I stood. "I'll be right back," I told my daughter. She grabbed my sleeve. "Don't go." I knelt in front of her, meeting her eyes. "I'm not going anywhere," I said. "I promise." That word, promise, felt heavier than any overtime shift I'd ever worked. When I opened the door, one of the officers stood there alone. "We need to talk about next steps," he said. I nodded and stepped outside, closing the door behind me. The cold hit immediately. "Honest." He explained things in a calm, practiced voice. "Reports. Follow-ups. Child services. Temporary arrangements." Each word felt like another brick laid in a road I couldn't turn away from. "Are you prepared to be her primary caregiver?" he asked. "Yes," I said without hesitation. The speed of my answer surprised even me. "Your work schedule?" he pressed. "I'll change it." "How?" "I'll figure it out," I said. "I always do. Just not like this before." He studied me for a moment, then nodded. "That matters," he said. When I went back inside, my daughter was standing in the middle of the living room, waiting. I crossed the space between us in 3 steps and knelt in front of her. "Do you remember what you asked me earlier?" I said. She nodded. "If I was bad." I took a breath. "This is important," I said. "So I need you to listen." She straightened. "You didn't do anything wrong," I said. "Not tonight. Not before. Not ever." Her eyes filled. "Even when I lied?" "Especially then," I said. "Lying is something kids do when they're scared. And it's our job to make sure you don't have to be." A tear slipped down her cheek. "I was scared," she whispered. I pulled her into me, holding her tight. "I know," I said. "I should have been here sooner." She shook her head against my chest. "I thought if I learned fast you'd come back." That one broke me. I pressed my face into her hair, breathing her in, letting the weight of that sentence settle where it belonged. "I'm here now," I said. "And I'm staying." She pulled back, searching my face. "You won't leave?" "No," I said. "Even when it's hard." She nodded slowly, like she was rewriting something inside herself. Behind us, my wife stood, watching. "This changes things," she said quietly. "Yes," I replied. "It does." Not a threat. A boundary. Later that night, after my daughter finally fell asleep on the couch with her head on my leg, I sat there in the dim light, listening to the house breathe. I thought about all the hours I'd traded for money. All the times I'd told myself I'd make it up later. Later had almost cost me everything. I looked down at her peaceful face, lashes resting against flushed cheeks, fingers still curled into the fabric of my hoodie like she was holding on even in her sleep. That was the moment I chose her. Not in words. Not in anger. But in action. In consequence. In the quiet, irreversible decision to reorder my life around the person who needed me most. Outside, the snow kept falling. Inside, for the first time all night, it was warm. Not because of the heat, but because the truth no longer had to freeze anyone to be heard. The days after that night didn't arrive all at once. They came in pieces. Paperwork. Phone calls. Meetings that smelled like coffee and carpet cleaner. Conversations where everyone spoke carefully, like we were walking across ice we weren't sure would hold. I took time off work. Not a vacation. Not a break. I told my supervisor I needed a different schedule. Fewer overnights. No more, just one extra shift. I expected resistance. I'd built my value there on availability, on being the guy who never said no. Instead, he just nodded. "Family comes first," he said. I wondered how many years it had taken him to learn that. At home, everything felt unfamiliar. Not because the furniture had moved, but because I had. My daughter stayed close. Too close. She followed me from room to room, sat on the floor while I showered, waited outside the bathroom door like if she didn't keep me in sight, I might disappear again. I didn't tell her she didn't need to. I let her. Trust isn't built with explanations. It's built with consistency. At night, she slept in my bed, curled into my side, one hand always gripping my shirt. I woke up stiff and exhausted, but I didn't move. This was the cost of staying. And it was worth it. The house was quieter now. Not the heavy silence from before, but a cautious one. Like we were all listening, learning what sounds were safe. My wife moved through the rooms like a guest. Polite, careful. She watched the way I talked to our daughter. The way I knelt to her level. The way I didn't rush her answers. One afternoon, while my daughter colored at the table, my wife spoke. "You've changed," she said. "I had to," I replied. She nodded. "I don't know how to do this." I believed her. "We'll learn," I said. But not by pretending nothing happened. That night, after our daughter fell asleep, we sat across from each other at the kitchen table. No yelling. No accusations. Just facts. I should have stopped it, she said. I should have protected her. Yes, I said. She flinched. And I should have been here, I added. We both failed in different ways. That was the first honest conversation we'd had in years. Not because it was gentle, but because it was real. The next morning, my daughter tested me. I knew it the moment she walked into the kitchen with her shoulders hunched and her eyes too steady. Daddy, she said, I didn't brush my teeth. She waited. This was the moment where the old rules would have come down, where consequences would have arrived before understanding. I crouched in front of her. Why are you telling me? I asked. She swallowed. Because it's the truth. I nodded. Thank you for telling me. Her eyebrows knit together. Am I in trouble? No, I said. But you still need to brush them. She blinked. That's it. That's it. Something in her shoulders loosened. Not all at once, but enough. Later, she spilled juice on the rug. She froze. I waited. I did it, she said quietly. I'm sorry. I handed her a towel. Let's clean it up, I said. She looked up at me like she was seeing a magic trick. That night she laughed. It startled both of us. The sound was small and unsure at first, like she wasn't certain it was allowed. Then it came again, louder, freer. I felt something in my chest unclench. Healing doesn't arrive with fireworks. It sneaks in through moments like that. We started therapy. I sat in a small room with beige walls and a woman who asked questions that didn't accuse, didn't excuse. Why did you work so much? She asked. I opened my mouth to answer, then stopped. Because the truth wasn't simple. I was afraid, I said finally. Of what? Of not being enough, I said. Of failing. Of slowing down and realizing I didn't know who I was without the job. She nodded. At home, my daughter drew pictures again. New ones. They weren't rules or signs or apologies. They were houses with open doors. Stick figures holding hands. Me, always drawn a little too big. One afternoon, while we sat on the couch watching snow melt off the windowsills, she leaned into me. Daddy. Yeah. Can I tell you something? Always. I lied once, she said. About liking peas. I smiled. That's okay. She giggled. I really don't like them. I don't either, I said. She laughed again. This time without checking my face. That's how I knew. Not that everything was fixed, but that something important had shifted. One evening as I tucked her into bed, she asked, You'll come home tomorrow? Yes, I said. And the next day? Yes. She nodded, satisfied. Certainty matters to kids. So does showing up. After she fell asleep, I stood in the doorway for a long time, watching her chest rise and fall. Learning how to stay wasn't about grand gestures. It was about mornings. About spilled juice. About brushing teeth and telling small truths without fear. It was about choosing presence again and again, even when it was inconvenient. Especially then. I turned off the light and closed the door softly. Tomorrow would come. And for the first time in a long time, I wasn't afraid of it. I used to think the hardest part of being a father was providing. Long hours. Overtime. Sacrifice measured in paychecks and exhaustion. I was wrong. The hardest part was staying. Not just physically, but emotionally. Mentally. Choosing presence on days when it would have been easier to disappear into work, into noise, into the version of myself that hid behind responsibility instead of living it. Spring arrived quietly. Snow melted into the gutters. The world softened. And inside our house, something fragile began to settle. Not happiness. Stability. The kind that doesn't announce itself. The kind you only notice when it's been missing for a long time. My daughter started sleeping in her own bed again. Not every night, but some. She still checked the hallway light before closing her door. Still asked what time I'd be home. I answered honestly. And then I made sure the answer stayed true. Work changed. I stopped volunteering for extra shifts. Stopped measuring my worth by how tired I was at the end of the day. The first few weeks felt wrong, like I was breaking an unspoken rule. Men don't slow down. Men push through. Men endure. That's what I'd been taught. But endurance without direction is just another way to get lost. One afternoon, my supervisor pulled me aside. "You okay?" he asked. I thought about the old answer. The automatic one. "Yeah," I said. And this time I meant it. At home, my wife and I learned how to talk again. Not the performative conversations we'd perfected over the years, but the uncomfortable ones. The ones where silence sat between us without being weaponized. We didn't fix everything. Some things don't get fixed. They get carried differently. We talked about boundaries. About the cost of avoidance. About the way fear dresses itself up as practicality. There were nights we sat at opposite ends of the couch, exhausted but present. That counted. One evening, while washing dishes, she said, "I don't recognize us." I didn't look up. "That might be okay." She considered that. "I'm trying," she said. "So am I." It wasn't a promise. It was a practice. My daughter started bringing friends over again. I heard laughter in the living room. The careless kind. The kind that only exists where fear doesn't. One day, as I helped her with homework, she paused and looked at me. "Daddy." "Yeah. You don't look tired like before." I smiled. "I feel different." "How?" I searched for the right words. "Lighter," I said. "Because I'm where I'm supposed to be." She nodded like that made perfect sense. Kids understand truth faster than adults. They just need to feel safe enough to hear it. Therapy continued. Some sessions were quiet. Others left me raw for days. I learned how much of my identity had been built around being needed instead of being known. I learned that control often disguises itself as care. And that love without presence is just intention. One afternoon, the therapist asked, "Who are you when no one needs you?" The question sat heavy. "I'm learning," I said. That answer surprised me. Because it was honest. The past didn't vanish. There were still court dates. Paper trails. Names we no longer spoke. But those things lived outside our walls now. Inside, we were building something quieter. Routine. Mornings became ours. I made breakfast. Burned toast. Packed lunches. Walked my daughter to the bus stop when I could. One morning, she slipped her hand into mine without looking. No announcement. No test. Just trust. I stood there long after the bus pulled away. Later that day, I passed a man at work bragging about how many hours he'd logged that week. The pride in his voice was familiar. I didn't judge him. I understood him. I just knew something he didn't yet. Time is the one thing you never get to earn back. One night as I tucked my daughter in, she asked, "Daddy, what happens if I make a mistake?" I sat on the edge of the bed. "Then we figure it out," I said. "Together." She thought about that. "Even big ones?" "Yes," I said. "Especially big ones." She smiled and rolled onto her side. I stayed until her breathing slowed. In the hallway, I caught my reflection in the mirror. I looked older, but steadier, less sharp around the edges, more real. I used to believe strength was about control, about enduring discomfort without complaint, about pushing forward no matter the cost. Now I know better. Strength is choosing presence when absence is easier. It's listening instead of assuming. It's staying soft in a world that teaches men to harden. Months later, on a quiet evening, my daughter brought me a piece of paper. A drawing. It showed our house. Smoke curling from the chimney. The door wide open. 3 stick figures inside. "Who's that?" I asked. "That's us," she said. "You're home." I swallowed. I pinned it to the fridge. That night, as the house settled and the world outside went dark, I realized something. The sign she held in the snow wasn't just a warning. It was a mirror. It showed me who I'd been, and who I didn't want to be anymore. I can't change what happened. But every day, I choose what happens next. I choose to stay. I choose to listen. I choose to be the kind of man my daughter doesn't have to protect herself from. That choice doesn't end. It begins again every morning. And this time, I'm here for it.